Hi guys. Vicky jumped the switch again. Damn, I'm spitting all over the place. Anyway, all right, so here we go. All right, got a lot to cover today. What I want to do is I want to do another wood review. My buddy Bruce Peter sent me 3 different kinds of woods, stuff that I've never carved before. We have some, I think, butternut. We've got some sassafras and some hickory. So I'm going to go over these one at a time, give you my honest opinion on them, what I think of them as carved signs, as using for carved signs. I've kind of played around with them a little bit, and what we're doing is, you guys have already seen these, but these, what we're using, what I'm carving in here is 3 out of the sports team that we just announced a Friday or so ago, something like that. I don't know, a while back. You guys have already seen them. Anyway, so let's take them one at a time, and I will give you my opinions. 3 different, completely different kinds of woods. So I have to sneeze.
I was going to say.
Or maybe not. I'm okay for the moment. But then I guess that's a matter of opinion. All right, so here we go. You awake back there? I think I heard a yawn. Sorry if I'm not exciting enough for you. All right, so I've got the profile bit in. I hear the phone ringing, but now that's the way it goes. And the first one I'm going to use, I'm going to try is the butternut. So I'm just going to start routing in there. I think I'm about 3/16 of an inch deep, something like that. Might be a little too deep, actually. I'm actually a little over 3/16. We're going to give it a shot and see what... Oh, I need my cheaters. Oh, by the way, for safety factor, I had somebody remind me, when I wear these hoodies like this, the cords, you should always tuck them in or cut them off, because you never know when one of those might get caught up, and that's a bad thing in the router or sander or whatever. So you always, and that was a really good reminder, because I hadn't even thought about that. So always either tuck them in or get rid of them altogether. All right, here we go. Oops. Brr, it's cold out here. All right. Well, that's relative too, I guess. Here we go. Okay, so I played around with this before. I just did a really fast test cut before, and some of the notes that I had made really are kind of coming through when I cut this. So it's a fairly light board. It's not really heavy. It's fairly light. Not as light as cedar or pine, but it's a fairly light board. It's really solid. Very hard. I mean, I wouldn't say it's super hard. It's not a really tight grain. It's a fairly loose grain, not super tight, but it's not chippy at all. It has a really pleasant smell to it. I don't know that I would pick this type of wood over cedar. But if I had this available to me, and I also want to test the way it looks with a finish on it. This looks like it's got a really pretty grain to it. That is of the three that I'm looking at. This has the most distinctive grain to it. And again, this is the butternut. But it is solid, but it's not chippy at all. I don't see it. I don't feel like it's chipping at all. Again, it's lightweight, but it's tight grain and it's really solid. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll set up and we'll move on to the next one. All right, so now we're going to move on to Sassafras, which is, that's just fun to say. Sassafras. So I picked the little sassy basketball player. So let's see how this carves. This, by the way, this one it's kind of a medium weight. The butternut was light. This one is a little heavier. It's kind of I would say a medium weight. And the grain looks actually a lot like oak. If I didn't know, I would say this was oak, as far as it's kind of like a red oak almost, but it's a little darker than that, a little browner than that. But the grain pattern kind of looks like oak to me. Here we go. Okay, the first thing I noticed is the smell. It, and I don't know if sassafras is used in any kind of medicinal purposes, but it almost has a minty or a menthol type of smell to it. Just barely, just slightly, but it almost has a menthol smell. This is definitely harder than the butternut. I can feel the router bit chattering a little bit. It did a little bit on the butternut, but on this I could feel it chattering even more. So it's definitely denser. It's harder. Again, not chippy at all. No sign of being chippy. Fairly tight grain. In fact, really tight grain if you look at that. Very tight grain. Again, kind of medium weight. Let me see, what else did I have? Definitely be able to hold a line as long as your bit's sharp. Now, I just sharpened this this profile bit, so it's pretty sharp. So you would definitely want, because it's more solid, you definitely want to keep your bits sharper when you're cutting something like this. But all in all, yeah, it cuts pretty good. I don't have a problem with it. Again, I'm not sure how it will finish. We'll find that out here in a little bit. So next, we'll move on to the hickory. All right, so now moving on to hickory. This one is definitely a heavy board. Very solid. Very heavy. I expect when I did my test cut on a little piece, it carved very hard. So that being said, what I decided to do is move on, and I'm cutting now with my 60-degree bit. And I've said this before, but just in case you hadn't heard this, the profile bit is very narrow as compared to the 60 or the 90. One of the best bits that I have for carving anything is the 60, because there's a lot more room to throw the chip out with a 60 degree than there is with the profile bit. So being as this is so hard, so dense, I'm going to use the 60-degree bit. I think I'll have a little bit, be able to cut it a little bit better with the 60 than I would the profile. So again, this is super heavy, super hard. Let's see what else we find out about it. Here we go. Yep, it's just as hard as I thought it would be, but not hard to hold a line. It doesn't really have much of a smell, not like the other two. This one really doesn't have much of a smell like the butternut or the sassafras. Again, not chippy. You can see even in here in those tight spots, it didn't really want to chip out. The 60 degree is definitely a better router bit to cut on something that's super hard like this. Again, the grain kind of reminds me of oak, another tight grain, much like the sassafras was. Just super hard. I can see why they make a lot of tool handles, axe handles, and stuff out of hickory. Man, this stuff it's just, you would not want to get smacked with that board, I'll tell you what. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and cut the background on this stuff. You guys have seen me do that many times. I'm going to do that on all three of them. I'm going to spray them, and then we're going to come back, sand them off, and see what they look like with a finish on them. Okay guys, I lied. I said I was going to do all the background in here and then spray them, sand them off. I'm still going to do that, but something that I realized when I was doing the background is if you look at these two, notice how this nice clean cut back in there. I brushed these, all three of these, I brushed really good with my stiff bristle brush. Huh? That way? But this one, and this is the butternut, I believe. Yep, that's the butternut. Look down in there. See how it has chips that just don't want to let go? That is what I don't like. I don't like that. That's one of the reasons that I didn't like. What was it that? Gosh darn it, I can't remember the name of the wood now that had that same characteristic. It's a really, really soft wood. Oh my gosh. Greg Warner and I talked about it. It's the one that they use for hand carving. Dadgummit. I'll think of it. I'll think of it when I come back. I'll tell you. But anyway, you can see down in that groove, you got stuff that just doesn't want to let go. That drives me nuts. I don't like that at all. So for that reason, butternut's off the list for me. That is butternut, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and finish it up, but this kind of wood, you have to go back in there and, you know, really brush it and really high maintenance kind of stuff, and I'm not crazy about that. So, basswood, that's it. I knew I'd think of it. Basswood. That's what basswood does really, really bad, or at least the pieces that I've tried to cut. It's soft, but it has characteristics that cause that chip to just stick down in there and doesn't want to let loose. Anyway, all right, guys, now I'm going to spray these, sand, and then come back and sand them off. let's blow them off, see what happens. Got a couple high spots in it. Sorry about that. Forgot to turn the compressor off. All right, so now this is the one. This is the butternut, right? Yeah, this is the one that where you can see how it's got little little burrs on there, little fuzzes on there. Not that that can't be overcome. It obviously can. But these two cut much cleaner than the butternut. That just kind of drives me nuts, that kind of stuff. Although I really like the looks of the grain on this. So I'm going to set this up real quick and we'll come back and throw some clear on here and see how they look. Okay, so first thing I want to say is I didn't show it, but the black primer is what I used for the, is that right? Is what I used for the black. You could use the Marsh ink, but I used the black primer. They both work the same to me. I'm just going to throw some real quick gloss, some of the Krylon crystal clear gloss on there. The other thing was the sanding. I used sanding. I used two different grits, two different sanders. 40 grit on the first sand and 80 grit on the second sand. So let's see what happens here. Just what I thought. I knew that butternut was going to look great with a finish on it. So let's wrap up. So looking at the way the butternut carved, it's going to be harder as far as maintenance goes. The easiest one to carve was the Sassafras, no doubt. It was easier to carve. The butternut was second, and the hickory was third. But the way that kind of holds onto the chip down in that on the butternut, I don't necessarily like that, but I really like the way that grain looks with a finish on it. So you just have to make your own decision on that. The hickory was super hard. I don't think I'd carve hickory again. I mean, it's not, you can hold a line, but it's really hard, and I'm sure it would be really hard on your bits. Your bits would dull up pretty fast. Tough on the router. My choice out of the three of these would be the Sassafras. It carved really nice. It looks really good with a finish on it. Doesn't look as good as this piece of butternut, but that would be, out of the three, the Sassafras would be my choice. So that's just my opinion, guys. You guys know probably, you can do a Google search and find out all the characteristics and the hardness and all the stuff on this. This is just my opinion on out of the three, what I would use if I had the choice. And Sassafras would be my choice out of these three. Anyway, hope this was helpful for you. Again, if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me, eric@makeawoodsign.com. I'm on Instagram every day, makeawoodsign. And give us a thumbs up, share it, and we would love it for you to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And please click that little bell icon so you get notified when we do more videos, which is 3 times a week. Anyway, guys, we'll see you on the next video. Love you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.